What if your child's biggest day turned into your biggest heartbreak? What if all the love you gave for years suddenly meant nothing? This is my story about what happened when I was told to stay out of the way, and how I did exactly that. It was a sunny April afternoon. I was in my kitchen making tea, just like I did every day. The sunlight was coming through the windows, making everything look bright and happy. I had just cleaned the counter for the third time that day. Old habits never die. I guess. My son Michael sat at the kitchen table. He was playing with his phone and tapping his foot. He seemed nervous about something. I thought maybe he had a problem at work. Then he said the words that changed everything. "Mum, I asked Jessica to marry me." She said yes. For a moment, time seemed to stop. I looked at my son's face. He looked so proud and so happy. My heart felt like it might burst, but in a good way. My little boy was getting married. I smiled so big my cheeks hurt. "Oh, Michael, that's wonderful news. I'm so happy for you." Right away, I started thinking about the wedding. The flowers, the music, the beautiful dress. I had planned weddings for 35 years before I retired. I knew everything about making a perfect wedding day. I had helped hundreds of families in Boston create their dream weddings. But this would be different. This would be my son's wedding. This would be special. I have so many ideas, I said excitedly. I still know all the best people in the business. I can help you plan everything. That's when I saw something strange in Michael's eyes. He looked away from me. "Actually, Mom," he said slowly, "Jessica already has ideas. She likes modern stuff. Simple stuff. She's thinking about hiring this wedding planner she saw on the internet." I felt confused. "Oh, but I thought... this is a family thing." I was hoping I could help with some of the planning. Then, he said something I will never forget. Jessica said, "And please don't be upset. But she said it would be better if you just stayed out of the way." Stayed? Out of the way. Those words hit me like a punch in the stomach. Stayed out of the way? I repeated, still smiling because I didn't know what else to do. Michael nodded. "She just wants things to go smoothly. You know how she is. She likes things done her way." I felt my smile freeze on my face. After a few minutes, I made an excuse about having a video call with a friend. That was a lie. I just needed to be alone. I went to my bedroom and sat in the dark. I thought about all those years working with other families. I thought about how many mothers I had seen cry happy tears at their children's weddings. And now, when it was finally my turn, I was being told I wasn't wanted. I didn't cry that night. I just lay there, feeling empty and confused. I told myself that maybe Jessica didn't mean it in a mean way. Maybe Michael just explained it wrong. But deep down, something had changed. I just didn't know. It was only the beginning. The next few weeks were strange. Michael would call me sometimes, but the conversations felt weird, like he was checking a box on a list. Jessica never called me at all. I told myself they were just busy. Planning a wedding is hard work. I tried to be understanding. Then Jessica invited me to lunch to talk about wedding ideas. She sent me a text that said, "Let's talk about the vibe." I wasn't sure what vibe meant, but I got dressed up nicely. I wore a pretty peach shirt and my favorite gold earrings. I even brought a folder with me. Inside, I had printed out some pictures of beautiful weddings. Flower arrangements that would work in any season. Tips for seating guests. Ideas for good photos. When I got to the restaurant, everyone was already there. Jessica, her mom, and some of her friends. Jessica barely looked up from her phone when I walked in. "Hey," she mumbled. I sat down and ordered tea. When everyone started talking about the wedding, I opened my folder. "I brought some ideas," I said. "Just some thoughts if you want to see them." Jessica didn't even look at my papers. She waved her hand like she was swatting a fly. Oh, that's okay, Margaret. We want something more modern. Nothing old-fashioned. The way she said old-fashioned made it sound like a bad word. And sure you have lots of great stuff from back in the day, she continued with a fake smile. But weddings are totally different now. Her friends giggled. One of them said, "Yeah, everything's on TikTok now." They all started talking like I wasn't even there. I sat holding my folder, feeling smaller and smaller. We just want something that's really US, Jessica said. Not like those old ballroom weddings with lace and stuff. That's just not our style. I closed my folder quietly and put it back in my bag. Jessica's mum leaned over and whispered, but not quietly enough. I told you she'd try to take over. Jessica gave her mom a look, then turned to me with a sweet voice. We really appreciate your excitement, Margaret. Really. But I already know exactly what I want. I smiled and said, Of course. It's your day. But inside I was breaking into pieces. When I got home, I sat in my car for 20 minutes. I just sat there, not moving. The radio was playing soft music. My hands were on the steering wheel. I thought about calling Michael. I thought about telling him how his fiancée made me feel. But what would I say? That she hurt my feelings. That she called my work old. He would just say I was being too sensitive. So I did what I always do. I swallowed the pain. I made myself some tea. I put on my soft pajamas and watched TV. I pretended everything was fine. But that night, I looked at myself in the mirror for a long time. I saw the wrinkles around my eyes, the grey in my hair, but I also saw strength I had forgotten was there. I whispered to myself, You deserve better than this. I didn't know it then, but that small whisper would change everything. The next morning, I went for a walk. The cold air made me feel more awake. I kept thinking about that lunch, about Jessica's voice, about her mom's whisper, about the way her friends looked at me. But I also thought about Michael. He hadn't called to ask how I felt. He hadn't thanked me for coming. After 3 days of waiting, I gave up hoping he would. Still, I wasn't ready to quit completely. Weddings are stressful. Maybe Jessica was just overwhelmed. Maybe her mom was putting ideas in her head. Maybe Michael was just trying to keep everyone happy. So I tried again. I sent an email to both of them. I listed some local vendors I had worked with for years. Good people who did beautiful work and didn't charge too much. I kept my message short and friendly. I ended with, Only if this helps. Love, Mom. I never got a reply. Not from Jessica. Not from Michael. The silence hurt more than any mean words could have. A few days later, I stopped by Michael's apartment. I had a box of his old things. Yearbooks, baseball cards, photo albums from when he was little. I thought maybe they could use some of the pictures at the wedding. Jessica opened the door. She smiled, but it wasn't a real smile. Oh, hi. We didn't know you were coming, she said. She stood in the doorway but didn't invite me in. I held up the box. I brought some of Michael's baby pictures. I thought maybe you could use them. Oh, she said quickly. That's sweet. But we're doing a slideshow with phone pictures. Super casual. I nodded. I just thought maybe some baby photos would be nice. She took the box but didn't look inside. Michael came to the door. You look tired. Hey, Mom. You didn't have to come all the way here. I was in the area, I lied. Just wanted to say hello. Jessica cleared her throat. Actually, we're about to leave. We have an appointment to look at a venue. Oh, I said. Did you find a place? Jessica smiled. Yeah, a rooftop downtown. Very modern. Very us. That sounds lovely, I said. My heart was sinking. Did you think about the Elmwood estate? I know the owners. They do beautiful outdoor weddings. Jessica's smile got tighter. Yeah, but that place is kind of dated. We want to avoid anything that feels like an old people wedding. She didn't even blink when she said it. I forced a laugh. Right, of course. They said goodbye and closed the door. I stood there for a moment before walking away. That night, I looked at my old wedding planning books. Thick binders full of ideas and contacts and memories. 35 years of work. 35 years of helping people create beautiful moments. And my own son had made it all into a joke. Old, dated, not their style. Felt something inside me getting harder. Colder. I decided to give it one more chance. I invited Michael and Jessica to dinner at my house. I made pot roast, Michael's favorite meal since he was little. I set the table with nice napkins and candles. I even baked an apple pie from scratch. They showed up 30 minutes late. The second Jessica walked in, she wrinkled her nose. Wow, that smell is really strong. I don't really eat red meat. I smiled and said nothing. Dinner was awkward. Every time I asked about their plans, Jessica gave short answers or no answers at all. Michael just sat there quietly, while I was pouring tea. I mentioned that I knew a wonderful lady who makes custom wedding dresses. Jessica put her down hard on the table. Margaret, I feel like you're not listening to us. We're doing things differently. This isn't the 1990s. We don't want a traditional wedding. I already have someone planning everything. Michael said nothing. I nodded. I hope it's everything you dream of. Jessica smiled. It will be. I know exactly what I want. I just need everyone to stay out of the way so things go smoothly. There it was again. That phrase. Stay out of the way. It wasn't a request anymore. It was an order. A line in the sand. She was telling me exactly where I belonged, outside of their lives. I cleared the dishes. I packed them some leftovers. I kissed Michael goodbye. When the door closed, I stood alone in my quiet house. I stared at the empty table. That was the moment I truly understood. I wasn't part of this. Not really. And Jessica had made it perfectly clear she didn't want me in her story. Fine, I thought. You want me to stay out of the way? I'll stay out of the way. But you're not going to like what happens when I do. That night, I thought about something I had kept hidden for years. Something precious. When my husband was alive, we had saved money together. For 20 years, we put away a little bit here and there. It wasn't always easy. Sometimes money was tight. But we kept saving because we had a dream. We wanted to give Michael a beautiful wedding one day. The kind of wedding we never had. The kind that shows your child how much you love them. After my husband died, I kept saving. Through lonely holidays, through hard times. I kept that money safe because I made a promise. The account had grown to a lot of money. Enough to pay for a beautiful wedding. But I realized something that night. Love should not be blind. Love should see clearly and choose wisely. Michael had chosen Jessica. Jessica had chosen to push me away. They had both treated my experience like it was worthless. They had both treated me like I was in the way. I wasn't going to pay for my own erasure. The next day, I went to the bank. I told the lady at the desk I needed to move some money around. She smiled and typed on her computer. To her, it was just another normal day. To me, it was something bigger. I took almost all the money out of the wedding fund. I put it into a different account, one that only had my name on it. I left just a small amount in the original account, enough to look normal if anyone checked. Then I went home and wrote a short note. I put a check for that small amount in an envelope. Dear Michael and Jessica, as you get ready for your big day, I wanted to give you this small gift. I hope you make it beautiful in your own way. Love, Mom. A week went by. No phone call. No thank you. Nothing. Then one evening, Michael showed up at my door. He looked stressed. "Hey, Mom, can we talk?" We sat in the living room. I offered him tea. He said no. "Jessica saw the check," he said. She was surprised. We both were. "We thought you were going to cover more. Like the whole thing." I nodded slowly. "I know. But I changed my mind." He blinked. "Why?" I looked him in the eyes. "Because I wasn't invited to be part of anything. Not the planning. Not the decisions. Nothing. I was told to stay out of the way. So that's what I'm doing." His jaw got tight. "It's not like that, Mom. Jessica just gets stressed easily. She wants control. She's trying to make everything perfect. Perfect doesn't mean pushing away people who love you," I said quietly. "And being stressed isn't an excuse for being mean." He didn't say anything. "She feels like you don't support her," he finally mumbled. I raised my eyebrows. "Does she?" "Because I try to give ideas. I brought pictures of your childhood. I wanted to help. Every time, I was shut down." He looked down at his hands. "I wasn't going to say anything," I continued. "I was going to keep smiling and pretending everything was okay. But the truth is, Michael, you let it happen. You watched her push me away and you didn't stop it." He looked up. His eyes looked hurt. "That's not fair." "No," I said softly. "It's just true." Finally, he stood up. "So that's it? You're not going to help at all?" "I did help," I said. "In the only way I was invited to." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Jessica's going to be really upset." I didn't answer. I was done fixing problems I didn't create. He left without really saying goodbye. For the first time in a long time, I didn't cry after he left. Because I wasn't sad about the money. I was sad about the moment that never came. The moment where I got to be a real part of my son's life again. But I also knew something else. They weren't ready to understand what they had lost. But soon enough, they would learn. The big mistake. A few days later, Michael called me. His voice sounded strange. Quiet and tired. "Jessica's really upset," he said. "She feels like you lied to her." I sat down slowly. "Lied? About the money?" "She thought you were paying for everything. She already committed to things." My blood went cold. "Committed? To what?" He hesitated. "She signed a contract with a wedding planner." "You signed a contract without having the money first." "It's someone famous on social media," he said quickly. "Her name is Savannah Bloom. She has like 2 million followers. She only takes a few clients each year." Jessica had to act fast. "How much?" I asked. Silence. "Michael, how much?" $55,000. I had to grab the edge of the counter to steady myself. "You gave someone you've never met. Someone you found on the internet. $55,000? She's legit, Mom. She has videos, testimonials, lots of pictures. Does she have a real business? An office? References you actually called?" Another pause. Jessica handled that part. I felt sick. I could see it all so clearly. The rushed decisions. The blind trust. The desperation to impress people. They had made a terrible mistake. "Mum, we had no choice," Michael continued. "Jessica already told people we hired her." I closed my eyes. "And now the whole wedding depends on this person showing up." "Show," he said. But I could hear the doubt in his voice. I didn't argue. I had already removed myself from their disaster. But that didn't mean I wanted to see them get hurt. Still, it wasn't my job to save them anymore. Weeks passed. I stayed quiet. I focused on my own life. I went for walks. Had lunch with friends. Read books. It was lonely sometimes, but it was also peaceful. Then Michael called me. I was in my garden when the phone rang. I almost didn't recognize his voice. It was shaky and hoarse. "She's gone," he said. I froze. "What?" "Savannah. She took the money. Her website is gone. Her phone doesn't work. Her Instagram disappeared. Everything." I sat down slowly on the garden bench. "We've been scammed," he said, his voice breaking. "All the money is gone, Mom. Every penny." I couldn't speak. "What do we do?" he asked. "What does Jessica say?" "She's not talking to me. She's blaming me. She says this wouldn't have happened if we had just used your money. If I had just convinced you." The irony was bitter. "That's not true," I said. "This happened because you both acted like the money and my experience were guaranteed. Like you deserved it without asking. Without respect." He was quiet. "I'm sorry," he finally whispered. "But apologies can't rebuild what pride destroys." Over the next few weeks, I heard bits and pieces through friends. The wedding was cancelled. At first they said, postponed, but everyone knew the truth. Vendors were lost. Deposits were gone. The stress turned to blame. The blame turned to anger. Soon, the engagement fell apart completely. I didn't celebrate. I didn't call. I stayed out of the way, just like they asked. And from where I stood, I watched everything collapse. Because that's what happens when you build something on ego and exclusion. When you forget to leave room for wisdom. When you push away the people who truly love you. Months went by. Quiet months. Empty months. At first, the silence hurt. I checked my phone constantly, hoping for a message. Just one word. Anything to show Michael still remembered me. But nothing came. No apology. No explanation. Nothing. So I stopped waiting. I filled my time with small, simple things. Morning walks. Coffee on the porch. An online book club. I repainted my hallway a soft green color. I cleaned out closets that had been full of old memories for years. Slowly, without even realizing it, I started to feel lighter. There was something strange about it. For the first time in years, I didn't have to shrink myself to fit someone else's expectations. I didn't have to be the helper mom, the fixer, the one who always said yes. I was just Margaret, and that felt like enough. I started saying yes to other invitations. Lunch with library friends. A garden tour with my old church group. A pottery class where my bowl came out crooked, and I laughed harder than I had in years. Slowly, I remembered who I was before I spent so much time to be what others needed. I didn't erase Michael from my life. His picture still sat on the shelf. I still kept his favorite snacks in the kitchen out of habit. But I stopped holding my breath, waiting for him to come back. That wasn't my job anymore. One day, I ran into a friend at the grocery store. She asked if I'd heard about Jessica. I shook my head. "She moved back in with her mom," my friend said. "Can you believe it?" After everything, I could believe it. "She's telling people Michael ruined the wedding," my friend added. "But I heard they were fighting before that. She wanted more control than he could give." I didn't respond. Because deep down, I knew it had never been about one wedding or one decision. It had been about power. About image. About ego. And relationships built on those things don't survive the first storm. That night, I sat alone in my living room. The lights were low. I had a book in my lap that I wasn't reading. I thought about all the versions of myself I had tried to be for other people. The fixer. The forgiver. The quiet peacemaker. And I realized something important. Love doesn't ask you to disappear. Love doesn't require you to shrink. Real love welcomes you, all of you. Or it's not love at all. That night, I slept without waking. No bad dreams. No regret. Because I had stayed out of the way like they asked. But I had also chosen to move forward. And I wasn't looking back anymore. A few weeks later, the story hit the news. I was drinking coffee in my kitchen when I saw it on TV. There was Savannah Bloom's picture, filtered and perfect, with a headline underneath. Social media wedding planner scams multiple couples out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. I didn't cheer. I didn't say I told you so. I just watched. The news showed other couples who had been scammed. One woman said her father took out a second mortgage to pay for her wedding. Another couple had to cancel their honeymoon. Then I saw Michael and Jessica's names mentioned briefly as local victims. Victims. Yes, they had been defrauded. Yes, they had lost money. But they were also victims of something else, their own pride. Jessica had wanted a spectacle. Michael had wanted peace. Neither had wanted the kind of help that didn't come with Instagram followers or trendy hashtags. They had wanted to control everything. And now everything had fallen apart. From what I heard through friends, Jessica blamed everyone except herself. The scammer. The algorithm. Even Michael. The engagement, already shaky, collapsed completely under the weight of disappointment. I wasn't surprised. I had seen it before. As a wedding planner, I had watched couples build weddings like they were performances instead of promises. And when the stage fell apart, so did the relationship. Jessica moved back to her mother's house. Michael stayed in the apartment alone. He didn't call me. Not then. But I knew he would eventually. You don't lose everything without looking back at what was real. And I had always been real. Still, I didn't sit around waiting. I volunteered at the library. I hosted brunch for old friends. I joined a writing group and told stories about my years in the wedding business. I started to feel something new growing inside me. Not just peace, but pride, because staying out of the way hadn't been weak. It had been powerful. I had chosen dignity over drama. And while they chased illusions, I stood still and let the truth reveal itself. Silence, it turns out, can be louder than any revenge. One day, I ran into a neighbor at the grocery store. She could barely hide her curiosity. "Did you hear?" she asked. "They called off the engagement. Jessica and Michael." I pretended to be surprised. "Oh my," she moved out. Her mom came to help her pack. "He's still in that apartment. Looks kind of lost." I thanked her and walked to my car. I sat there for a while in the parking lot, letting it all sink in. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel relieved. I felt clear. Because when something ends, especially something that was never built to last, it doesn't need applause. It just needs acknowledgement. I thought back to that April afternoon when Michael first told me he was engaged. The sparkle in his eyes. The hope. The belief that he'd found something real. I thought about all the times I tried to help without being pushy. Tried to support without surrendering. Tried to be included without begging. He hadn't seen me then. And Jessica had never looked past her own reflection long enough to see anyone else. I was sad. Not for the wedding that didn't happen. Not for the money or the drama. I was sad for the years Michael would carry. For the lesson he'd have to learn the hard way. That he'd been chasing approval, not love. And I, the woman who knew him best, had been written out completely. I didn't call him. I didn't reach out. Not because I was angry. Because I had learned something important. You can't teach people to value you. They have to choose it themselves. So I waited. And in the meantime, I filled my life with real things. I started teaching a workshop at the community center. I helped young women plan weddings on small budgets. Not for money, just to share what I knew. They listened. They asked questions. They wrote things down. And for the first time in a long time, I felt heard again. One evening I walked home through the cool November air. The sun was setting early, painting everything gold. I stopped at a small park and sat on a bench. A little girl was trying to fly a kite that kept falling. Her dad kept encouraging her. "Try again. You almost got it." And she did, over and over, laughing when she failed, laughing when she succeeded. I realized something then. I had spent so many years trying to make my relationship with Michael something it wasn't ready to be. Throwing myself into the wind, only to fall, only to be told I was too much or not enough. But I wasn't a kite. I didn't need someone else to lift me. I had my own wind. That night, I opened my windows to let in the cold air. Sharp and honest, and in that quiet, I forgave him. Not because he asked, but because I was finally done carrying weight that wasn't mine to carry. One Saturday afternoon, I was coming home from the store when I saw someone standing by my front gate. It was Michael. I stopped walking. He looked different, thinner, older somehow. Not in years, but in experience. "Hi, Mom," he said quietly. My heart skipped. Not from anger. From the simple tenderness of hearing that word again. Mom. I unlocked the gate. "Are you hungry?" He smiled, a small, real smile. "Starving." We didn't talk about Jessica over lunch. We talked about regular things. His job, a book he was reading, a podcast he liked. I let him fill the space with words, like a kid coming home after a long journey. Then at the end, after the dishes were cleared and I was making tea, he said something that changed everything. "Her name is Emily." I turned around. "She's different," he said softly. "Kind, real, she asks questions. She actually listens." He paused. "She asked about you the first time I mentioned my past. Not about the wedding. About you. She said she wants to meet the woman who raised me." I felt something stir inside me. Careful hope. "She's not trying to prove anything," he continued. "She doesn't need to control everything. She just wants to build something good." "And you?" I asked. "I want to do it right this time." We sat in comfortable silence. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a photo. A young woman standing in a garden. Sunlight in her hair, holding wildflowers. Her smile was warm, real. "She said if we ever get married, she'd want you to plan it," Michael said, looking into my eyes. "She said it would be an honor." I looked at the photo. Not to judge, but to see the woman who saw me. What I saw wasn't glamour or fashion or trend. It was warmth. I set the photo down gently. "I'd like that. Not for a second chance. Not for redemption. But because for the first time I was being invited in. Not assumed. Not expected. Not taken for granted. Invited. Later that evening, after Michael left, I sat at my kitchen table with a new notebook. Fresh, blank pages. A clean start. I wrote her name at the top. Emily. And underneath, I started a list. Not of decorations or colors or plans, but of feelings I wanted her wedding to hold. Joy. Honesty. Gentleness. Gratitude. Because this wasn't about perfection. It was about making something real. And this time, I was ready.